MDG. So he's going to tell a story now, not so much a presentation, but a story about our startup. Please, a big hand, big motivational hand for Dvir. Thank you.
So I'm very excited to be here. It's a great initiative, and as you're going to see in our short story that I'm going to tell here, we also had a similar experience to the startup presentation competition that was here, but let me dive just in, and my goal is just to tell you a story, or short history, as Soluto, a bit about myself, and maybe 1 minute about Soluto, because I don't think that's the core of our story, but the idea about Soluto is that the world is surrounded with more and more devices. The last 5, maybe more years, we're seeing great acceleration. Every single person has got a few devices all over them, and the thing is that most people are not very technical. 99% of people are just people that want to live their lives, they're happy about it, they don't care about the next smartphone, the next operating system. They just want to live their life and do the things that they like. Every home nowadays is becoming somewhat a small network, a small IT organization. You've got multiple devices, you've got smart this, smart that, and it's only getting bigger, while the people don't change. People don't want to dive into the technology and mess around with it. So the idea about Soluto was to take that and just bring happiness to people around the technology and devices that they have. So just a taste. This is one of our latest versions. This is something that lets you manage all your devices at home. Very simple in a way. You add your things, your computers, your smartphones. You're seeing a hint about the connected car. That's going to happen in the near future. And it's all very, very simplified. You get simple communication designed for the average person, not very complicated, not technical. You learn more about your devices and things. And that was the concept since day one, pretty much. And I'll tell you a bit about myself, which brings to that idea and that vision. So I was born in Israel, which is over there, somewhere small. This is Israel, which is about twice the size of over Croatia, I think, something like that. In 1 hour, you can go side to side. Three times? Wow, it is. Okay, a very small place. I was born somewhere in the center, in a small town, and from a very young age, I really liked animals. Great, furry. And when I was about 6 years old, I asked my parents for rabbits for some reason. They're nice, I got red eyes, pretty scary. And pretty quickly I found out that if you take 2 rabbits from the opposite gender, you put them together, you get more rabbits. That was crazy, out of nowhere. The next thing that I found out that if you take those small rabbits to the store, which you initially bought your first rabbits, they're going to pay you. That was amazing. So I started, at about 6, I started to breed the rabbits and make money of it. I bought my first gadget, which was a Casio calculator watch. That was like the gadget in the 80s. It was amazing. You could calculate things. That's it. But that was a very interesting experience. Around the same age, around 6, I also saw the first PC. So an old PC with a green screen, an XT machine, and pretty much fell in love in a few minutes. It was something that you can tell it what to do, and it does it. It's great. And that was a big revelation in my life. Since then, I continued to learn by myself. There wasn't any internet, any resources. So I just continued and really fell into programming and that entire concept. One of the interesting things that I found out around those years is that PCs were starting to become popular. People started to buy them for various reasons, but no one really knew what to do with them. You turned on a PC, and after a few seconds, you got this A drive sign, and it was waiting for you to tell it what to do. do with it. People didn't know what to do. At a very young age, I started to teach people the things that they can do with it. And they could take it to various directions. Someone who's got a business could do something that's related to their business and improve it. Someone who's got a hobby around something, maybe they can do something. So it was endless, it was quite amazing. And that was a revelation about the potential and the fact that most people have no idea what to do with technology, with PCs, those days. So this is a picture I put to symbolize my high school. We're nowhere as cool as these guys, but I went to quite a geeky high school. I was actually one of the worst students over there because I didn't go a lot and did the things that I liked instead. So wasn't the best student at all. But one thing that I did see in high school, that there are few people that came from families that do have money and many that don't. And I tried to understand the difference. What's the difference in the path of that person, or more accurately, that person's family? And what I found out is that most people that had money actually started their own business and got away from a path that I was taught from a very young age. And with that, I ran into that book, which was pretty revolutionary for me. Anyone read that book? Okay. That guy, I think, was caught for tax fraud, but with no regard, it's quite a good book. And I recommend it. But the idea around that book was the fact that there's no path. No one is going to come in the morning and going to tell you, maybe you can start a business, maybe you can try this, maybe you can take that idea that you just ran and actually make it real. This is something that you have to wake up in the morning and do by yourself, which is quite scary because, again, from a very young age, we have a path. We know that we do this until that age, and then we do that, and then we have to be successful in this, and this is the path. And this is completely different. You have to do it by yourself. So that was quite an experience. At the age of 18, and just like everyone in Israel, I had to go to the army. This is, by the way, the secret of the success of our Air Force. This is how they practice. And they were good. So I was in an R&D unit, which did projects and basically like a small startup. And I've been there for 3 years. It's standard time for guys. And then the day I left the army, after 3 years, I started a small software company. It was together with a friend from high school. And we decided that we're going to start something. We're not sure what we're going to do, but we're going to create software and try to sell it to various companies. So we tried. We were very young, we were very inexperienced, but that was a complete failure. It was terrible. We didn't know what we're doing. We had no idea. We failed. And that was the end of it after 2 years. Looking back, I know that a lot of the experience and a lot of the good things that I learned are thanks to that experience. And Christina talked about failure. I think I'm going to talk about it quite a bit. But failure is one of the best things that you can experience. So after those 2 years, I decided that I want to learn quite a bit and look for something that's interesting to me, and started to look for a job. So I went around and went shopping for something interesting, and my definition was something that's going to get me excited pretty quickly when I get there. And that happened faster than I thought. I ran into a small startup company that had 10 people at that point that created a medication dispensing system. I found out that about 30% of medications in hospital are wrong in some way. Think about it for a second. 3 out of 10 are wrong. Be careful when you're hospitalized. I also found out that 10% of medical staff are also addicted to drugs, but it's a different story for a different presentation. So I've been there for 5 years. I grew to become the company's CTO. I managed the development of hardware and software. It was amazing. Eventually, out of scratch, we created a system that helped people get better. It was deployed in a few hundred hospitals, mostly in the US. And that was probably the most important teaching experience that I had in my life. 5 years of understanding manufacturing support, development, customers, the horrible experiences with customers, the difficulties in selling, politics, schmoozing, everything that you need to have in order to sell something. So after 5 years, I started to feel that it's time to start something of my own. I love the product, I love the company, but I felt an urge to do something different. So I went on a path, left the company, and started to look for two things concurrently: ideas and someone to do it with. Because to do it by yourself is very difficult, and it's much better to find a partner to do it with. So starting to do both concurrently, I was, when you're looking for a partner, you imagine that everyone that you're going to run into is someone serious that you can rely on, trustworthy, that you're going to love working with. Very quickly you find out that most people are pretty different, and might not be the best person to be a partner. But after meeting a lot of people, running through a lot of ideas, looking for the chemistry, looking for someone you really like, I ran into someone who we decided to start to work together. He was my co-founder, Ishai, and together we started Soluto. This was actually the opposite of the romantic idea of having a revolutionary idea at night and then starting it. I was actually looking for someone. Together we started to go through ideas that we had. We had no idea on day one what we were going to do, and we started flowing with the experience that we have, reading, researching, trying to talk to people. That was the non-romantic beginning of that experience. So, after we got to the conclusion of what we want to do, we want to get people to be happier with technology, to use more technology, we started to think and see how we're going to do it. And the first question when you start a company is, how are you going to go? Are you going to go and look for funding? Or are you going to start to bootstrap, meaning you're going to start small, make your own time, the investment, and start to make money very early. So we got to the conclusion that with the hardcore technology we want to develop, it's going to be very hard to go on the bootstrapping path, and we went on the funding path. And the word fun is included in the word funding, but there's no real reason for that, because it's not. I want to talk about angel investors for a second. Angel investors are quite a remarkable thing if you think about it. Those are people that worked hard on something, most likely, and made money, paid taxes on that money, most likely, and with the remaining part of that they have at hand, they're willing to invest that in you. That's pretty crazy, and I learned to appreciate that a lot. But let's talk about the process for a second. So, getting funded is very similar to go through lots and lots of auditions. It's very similar to being an actor. And it's similar in a way that you work a lot ahead of time on meetings, and you're trying to get that meeting. That meeting is very hard. You get bombarded with very difficult questions. You're the small one in the room at that opportunity, and sometimes, in rare occasions, they might even pull you back. That's a typical funding experience, and to give it some proportion, our first seed funding experience, we were 2 and a bit people. We had another person who started helping us. We had a presentation, a deck, which was horrible, by the way, and we had some initial software mock-ups to our concept. This is what we had at hand. Then we started to meet investors. So 8 months into the process of all that, in total, about 60 meetings. Think about that for a second. 60 meetings of a few hours working like that, not getting a call back. We gathered a small funding round that actually grew. It wasn't like a one point of a lot of funding, it continued to grow, and eventually we got to $1.6 million after 8 months of ongoing investments. While in the background, continuing to grow a bit, continuing to develop, and moving on. Now, we got to work, and I won't dive into the product because I think we came to talk about the company and startups and funding. So, in the background, we constantly continue to talk to VCs. VCs are the more established investors that actually takes various types of funding and are looking for good places to put the money to make a lot of money. usually within 7 years. So in the background, continuing to meet VCs, after 8 months, one of the VCs that we met was really interested and wanted to take some small part. There's an interesting way for VCs to join a company, which is sort of a small investment, sometimes a convertible loan, something that at the next round they're going to take part of the company, and this is what we did. We took money from Giza, a relatively small Israeli VC, something that we have in Israel. We actually have quite a few local VCs, which is an amazing thing for an ecosystem. And together with that, with relatively a few millions compared to the initial part, we got an additional $700,000 to be able to continue to work. So a few things about fundraising. Fundraising is something that's going to take, at least from the person who leads the company, most of his time, most of his energy and mental abilities and efforts, because it's very tiring, it's hard, and it's constant negative results, because 99% of what you're going to do is not going to work, and you're not going to get funded, and it's very interesting to see how much you're out of the day-to-day when you do that thing. It's crazy. Now, going back to work, we continued, things progressed, time passed, and we understood after about another year that we need to grow. We need to grow, time passes, we need to understand how we move on to the next phase. Reminder, no product is out yet. Not a good thing. So, again, leading a company, started to go all around. In Israel, there are a few cities which are very common for funding. Herzliya, Tel Aviv. I found myself having 4 or 5 meetings every day, going and every meeting bringing all the energy, starting from scratch, understanding that most likely it's going to fail. That's the way it was. We also went to Seattle to see a few VCs, to start to see if we can raise money from abroad. And at that point, we were about 12 employees, still had mostly a presentation, had an initial version that ran with 40 users. 40 users, that's less than, it's very, very few. But then we started to get bombarded with hard questions. What is this? We need another opinion. This is not certain, and all of that, and it was very, very difficult to get there. So one tip around that is that if there's meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting with the same VC and no foreseeable progress, it probably means that they're not interested. But they're going to continue to meet you because that's their job. They need to meet companies and see what's going on. And again, you have to raise up and say, okay, this might not be working. A very common excuse for entrepreneurs that we give ourselves is they don't understand me, they don't understand the startup, they're not smart enough. Maybe they are smart enough, maybe they do understand, and maybe something is wrong with what you're doing. So you have to understand that. And the important thing, you have to know when to stop. And this is what we did. So I call this round fail. We were in the same place, many months, many meetings, a lot of time, and we got nothing besides a broken heart. So we got back to work. We still had money. We took a break. We continued with the product, and it was starting to look interesting. And one thing that we continued in the background is to respond to VCs that wanted to meet us. We continued to meet them. They came to visit, and there's a great quote from one of our investors that says, great entrepreneurs are never fundraising. That's the most common lie that we always tell everyone in fundraising. No. And but great investors don't mind asking. And that was exactly the case with the person who eventually invested. And so after only 3 weeks, only 3 meetings, when that person came, we got to a pretty big funding round, which was pretty amazing for us at that point. And I'll continue to the more interesting part of the story. So this was the total so far. We raised almost $8 million. We were about 20-something employees, continued to work, continued to grow, and have not released a product yet. So at some point we were ready to release, after 2 years or more. which I can definitely say that this is probably one of the biggest mistakes that we did. I think that nowadays it's much more common and common knowledge and expectation to release something very fast and start to make your mistakes with real people very, very soon. But that's definitely one of the biggest mistakes that we've done. So we thought, what's the best place to release our thing, what we created and what we imagine people might like, even though we haven't tested it with anyone. And we saw that around that time there was a nice event and a competition, very similar to what we have here in the Silicon Valley. Actually, that one was in New York, the first one. TechCrunch is a Silicon Valley entity, very well-known, well-respected in the world. And we said to ourselves, there's no chance that we're ever going to win anything like that, but at least we're going to release the product and someone is going to hear about it. That was the plan. We went there. Surprisingly, we continued to progress with the competition. It was going way better than we imagined. And I want to show you 1 minute of the end of that competition. And let's hope that works.
What we have up here is an Israeli headquartered company that's a hardcore software startup founded by a rockstar team of developers. We've had a lot of Israeli startups at our events over the years. Go pretty deep into the event, but never has an Israeli startup won an event. UJAM, I think it's headquartered in Germany or LA or both. Yeah, let's call you a German startup. I like that. Because you are. I mean, how different could you be than Soluto? You're completely consumer focused. It's like crazy, fun, awesome, you know, creating music. Jam with your head, as one of your co-founders have said. So, very different companies. The judges liked you two the best. It's very close though.
Go either way.
It couldn't have gone either way. But it was close. It was very close.
Can we ask them?
The champagne got popped up by mistake by someone there.
So there's the champagne. We're gonna get to you in a second, David. But, I mean, you open the champagne, like, who does that? Plus, that's the cheat, Look, just don't touch anything else until you're specifically asked to, okay? Eric, do the honors. Why don't you say who the runner-up is?
Runner-up, it's UJ.
Okay, so that's what he said, that the runner-up was UJ. The thing is that none of us ever watched reality TV or anything like that, and none of us really knew what it means to be a runner-up. So if you can see the confusion over there, we weren't sure who won, and in a few seconds you're going to see my co-founder understands, and he's happy
So guess
about
what the winner is?
30 seconds after.
Congratulations to Soluto, TechCrunch Disrupt champions.
So much. So we didn't expect that, and we won the first TechCrunch Disrupt competition, and we definitely didn't expect the thing that followed, which was, unlike our expectation to get 10,000, 20,000 users, I think we got 10,000 users in the first 2 minutes. And we got, in the first few days after the competition, we got a few hundreds of thousands of users, which our servers were definitely not ready for, and everything crashed. So nothing worked for quite a few weeks. It was difficult. No one went to sleep at the office. People slept under their desks, and we weren't ready for anything like that. That was quite an experience. Looking back, talking about the biggest mistakes of the company, we're talking about one, which is not releasing a product. It might be that the second most difficult or challenging thing that we did in the company was to win that competition. And I'll explain you why. Winning such a thing, getting such hype for something that never actually proved itself with real people, never made 1 cent, could be misleading. because you wake up the day after and the month after, and you think that you're successful, so now everything's great, you can continue to do what you did. And you're not fully aware of the things that you haven't done, the things that you haven't proven, and the fact that you might have money in the bank, which is temporary because it's using it every day. That's not trivial at all. So looking back, there are obviously good things about that, but I can definitely say that there were bad things about winning that competition. So think about that. So let's talk about 6 years after, which is a year ago. Where are we at? We were on around 3 million devices, about 200 countries in the world of people using our stuff. One of the most exciting things for me personally was that we got a pre-installed deal. We were working on a few, one actually happened. So we were pre-installed on every Acer machine that were sold in every English-speaking country. This is from Best Buy, a store that I went to in the US. I entered there and we were there. It was an amazing experience for me. People loved what we did. A lot of the formal things like Microsoft Partner of the Year and TechCrunch and all that. I had lunch with Steve Ballmer, who's one of the funniest people in the world. Microsoft's former CEO, he's crazy, totally crazy person. But I think the more exciting part was around the actual people that use the product. We constantly got feedback from people that loved what we did, and that was the fuel. Coming to work every day, working 16 hours, not getting paid a lot, that was worth it all. In addition, we were about a team of 40 people, 40 great people, because one thing that we had in our own manifesto is that we're only going to work with people that we like. We're not going to have any jerks, and we're not going to have anyone who's not fun to work with. We kept that to this day. But also we raised $18 million, which is a lot. Which is a lot of money, which is liability. You raise that money, it is liability. We did 3 major pivots. Pivots is a point in time where you're saying to yourself, this sucks. I don't like what we did so far, we need to change direction. So we had 3 major changes to various directions, which is scary because you wake up in the next morning coming and you have almost nothing because you just changed the direction. We tried various business models, most of them failed. We almost ran out of money. When you run a startup, you're constantly running out of money, but whenever you're getting close, it's the scariest thing ever. And we haven't slept well for 6 years. 7 now. But then one day, I got this email and from a guy named John Leonard, great guy, and I'll focus on this point, from Asurion. And he said, I'm very interested in further understanding your roadmap, let's talk about the partnership. And I did what every responsible CEO would do with that email. I've ignored it for a few days, and they forwarded it to someone else to handle. And basically nothing really happened for a few days. Sorry, for a few days. You get a lot of those emails and you need to prioritize. Almost ignored this one. So this guy actually went to one of our investors and reached me and urgently called me and said, you gotta get that guy answered and something happened to that email. So fast forwarding 5 months later, we got acquired by Asurion. Asurion is one of the biggest private companies in the world. It's not a public company. It's a very interesting company that serves most of the carriers, the mobile carriers in the world, in almost all the US and a lot of other countries. And we got acquired. A word about the acquisition. I think that what we met when we started to meet Asurion was quite interesting. We met a company that shared our vision. Their entire vision is to make people happy about their technology. It just so happens that they had 280 million paying users and almost no technology, and we had a lot of technology and almost no users. So it was a perfect match. We had great chemistry from day one, and after meeting quite a few companies that were interested through the years, that was a perfect match, and I think we all fell in love from the first moment there. So it took 5 months, which I think is considered relatively short for an acquisition, and it was a great acquisition because in the bottom line, we continue to do exactly what we did. We don't have to worry about running out of money every 5 months. And we're going to get hundreds and hundreds of millions of users in their hands. So right now, actually as we speak, we're now working on being pre-installed on every Android Verizon phone that's being sold. Verizon is one of the 2 big carriers in the US. And AT&T, which is the second biggest carrier in the US, and many others in the world. So that's probably one of the biggest things. Everything that anyone now does in the company, whether they write their line of code, design something, it gets to many, many people, and that's pretty exciting. So what's the message? What's the story of this entire thing? So I think one of the things that people are not necessarily aware of, not necessarily think of, that it's quite a long run. I think that the average time for companies that are considered relatively successful, it's a vague definition, but the number is 7 years. When you start a company, you don't think about that. And I think the extreme optimism you have to have as an entrepreneur have to suppress that fact, because else no one would start a company. It's pretty crazy. Most things won't work, most things you're going to fail. Most people are going to say no. Most deals are not going to go through. And that's pretty extreme. And you have to be aware of it, and you have to hug it. You have to like it, and it's a part of the thing. It's an emotional roller coaster, meaning you're going to be way more sad, disappointed, and depressed than extremely happy. It's like a roller coaster, but mostly the way down, 90% of the time. People will leave. Also, you start something, it's a small family, but through the years, suddenly someone moves on, you're not getting along with someone. So it's also a pretty new thing when you start that. We're now in our 3rd generation of people working in the team. And it's constantly a survival mindset. You constantly think about how we're going to do next week, next month, sometimes tomorrow. And that's something you have to learn to live with, and again, to like it. You have to like it because it's a part of the thing, it's exciting, it's not easy, but it's definitely part of it. But what's in the bottom line, you have to do it. The hardest thing to start, in order to start, is actually to start. You have to leave your job, or decide that you're not going to do it, decide that you might not have enough money in the next few months, and you're going to change your life, you're going to have less time for your friends and family, for your partner, and you have to do it. You have to go and start. So that's my message. Go and do it, have fun with it, enjoy the ride, and start a startup.
Any questions, maybe? So, this is typical Croatian. Ajde ljudi, postavite neko pitanje, čovjek je došao ovdje iz neke daleke zemlje, nemojte me sramotiti ovdje pred ljudima, ok? Postavite bar neko pitanje, ispadamo pametni. It's gonna be okay now.
What did you promise? What do you have to do now?
Don't embarrass me in front of the guests. We're all a bit stuck. So, any questions? There's a question. How interesting.
It's worked. I don't know what you promised. Whatever you promised, I'm going to do.
Wait for it. There's a beautiful lady giving you a microphone.
I think it's really interesting that you guys went 2 years and you raised millions of dollars without actually building anything. And I'm kind of wondering if you can speak to the difference between, when you got started and where things are now. Since, like I'm a founder, and the general expectation, before even angels will talk to us, is they want us to have shipped a product with at least 100,000 users.
Yes, so I will compare it to about 10 years before we started, the first bubble, the well-known bubble. So back in the days, it was very common for a company to raise sometimes 60 million, 80 million, sometimes 100 million without releasing anything. Technology was more expensive, you had to buy servers, you had to develop a lot, and that constantly improved. On our time, technology was much better. Cloud started to be available, everything was shorter, but still you needed to work a lot in order to release the first product. Not that it's a good enough excuse, and as I said, probably our biggest mistake. Nowadays, with everything way simpler, way cheaper, you can get a web app plus a mobile app running with no time and no money. So does the expectations to be much further. And nowadays, people expect you to work in the garage with a few people, get an app, get a website, get it working, get users, and get feedback in order to raise money. So it's definitely harder, but the ground is way easier to start that. You don't have to buy a $20,000 server just to start. So I think it constantly changes, and nowadays you have to come with numbers. People want to see your successful graph and happy users before they even talk to you.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
Any other questions, maybe? Oh, guy in first row. Yeah. Oh, wait, come back. Yes.
You said that your initial investment was quite high for this type of country. It was, what was it, a couple of millions, around 3 million for the beginning. And you said that you were almost broke more than a few times. What was burning the money so fast?
So first of all, the first investment was quite small. It was less than $100,000, and we continued to raise money. The thing that burns your money is you having people working for the company and paying salaries mostly, and time passes. So this is the biggest drain for a company. The fact that things break and things don't work, it's a part of the process of building something. So it's an integral part of it. You have to expect it to be like that. Investors, no. They're disappointed when it's not working because everyone would want it to work right away, but that's the way that it works. You have to fail and fail and fail until things start to work on all fronts.
And drugs, don't do drugs. So you burn a lot of money using drugs.
Yes, exactly.
Don't do it. Any other questions maybe? There's a gentleman over there. And we're waiting for you, it's okay. Got all the time.
Hello, just one question about motivation, of course.
Sorry, about motivation.
About motivation, here is all about money as a first problem. But I think, as you mentioned already, that idea is the first problem from my point of view. And your idea gave you strength to go further and to make next step. And what is the secret of found good idea in sense of global market, and how you solve this problem when you was without money, and how your idea get you a strength? I mean, is it the first problem to find really good idea that somebody trusts to your idea, not only you, or money is a more important thing? And if you have enough money, you can get each idea to be alive. Thank you.
Well, ideas are a very interesting subject because ideas by themselves are worth nothing because of two reasons. One is that the idea by itself is not doing anything, it's the execution. And most of the most successful companies, none of them were first. Not Facebook, Google, and they were fifth or sixth. But the way that they executed was the reason for their success. Now, in terms of a good idea, it's a nice start, but what's going to happen in reality is that once you start to work with users and real people and start to listen and start to understand what's really going on, things are going to change drastically. So if you have an idea for a vision or what you want to change, I think that's okay. But the way to do it is definitely going to change various times. Most of the ways are going to fail, and you just have to continue to believe in your end goal and go for that. Money is a tool to do that. That's all. Nothing else.
Okay, we got time for one more question, is it okay? Then we need to have a coffee break and the other panel. Okay? One more question?
Hello, I'm Marco. One question about the whole process of forming a team, because you had a process of 6 years and you were hiring a lot of people. So tell me, how did you motivate those people, because you didn't have a product on the market, and people need some motivation or stimulation to work. Thank you.
Yes, it is one of the biggest challenges running a company. You have to have the best people join you first. That's the first challenge. Then you have to keep them and make them a part of it and happy about it. And it's definitely something that's not trivial. It doesn't always work. And as I said, nowadays we're with our third generation of people because of two reasons. One is that some people at some point got tired of it, lost faith, didn't think that it's going to work or just didn't fit them. The other reason that in various phases, different people were the right match. So someone who was the right person to do their job on day one might be very wrong after 2 years or after 3 years. So you have to, I remember the first time we understood that we need to fire someone. It was something I needed to work on for days with myself to be able to do. It was a friend, it was a family, it was someone that went through the mud with us, but we had to do it. And but you get used to it, unfortunately, afterwards. And it's a part of the thing. It's a part of it. Motivating is related to a lot of things, your leadership, where you stand, how things look, the level of risk that person is willing to take. Sometimes there are different levels that different people can, even in different phases of their lives. Definitely one of the biggest challenges. You grow into it. There's no book to become perfect at it. There's no one that can teach you. You have to listen and you have to treat everyone as part of the family, as part of what you create.